Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I thought it would be cool to do a video on the process I use for drawing monsters. This video will be less of a how-to and more of a let's draw kind of thing, though I can definitely do a tutorial video on how to draw monsters in the future if that's something anyone would be interested in. But anyways, let's get right into the drawing. So I didn't actually have any kind of plan or idea going in. This first part is kind of just feeling out where my brain is going to take me. And I think I probably start about half of the drawings that I do this way without any solid plan. But now I've got a general kind of pose down, and I got the idea that this might be some sort of dragon. So I went through and thickened up the arms and added a long tail wrapping around the rocks below him. And now that I have a general sketch down, I'm going to drop the opacity on that, make a new layer, and then start doing some more details in orange over top. Now I'm using orange here because it stands out and won't get confused with my final line work later on. And I do this quite a bit. It's an easy way to keep track of everything. I'm giving him short, stubby, but really powerful arms because I imagine he probably hugs pretty close to the rocks as he's climbing, because I'm going to have him sitting on top of a mountain. And I have a mix of scales and fur here, so it's kind of drifting away from dragon a little bit, and I don't think I'm going to add wings. And now I'm going to make a new layer, go in with green and outline the rock below him. And again, I'm using green because it stands out, and that way when I zoom in later, I won't confuse monster with rock while I'm doing my line work. I was going to jump in and start doing my final line work here, but on the spur of the moment I decided I was going to add ears, so I'm going in with purple and adding some other details in addition to the ears while I'm here. It might look weird, but I'm doing my sketch on so many layers, so I don't have to try and erase certain parts out if I don't like them. I can just remove the layer they're on. And that cuts down on the amount that I would have to redraw if I do remove a detail. After I added the spikes to the face, I got the idea to add more along the elbows and down into the hands, which I'm now covering in scales. I think this guy's going to be a mountain predator, so I'm giving him a mix of skin, scales, and fur. And then I also got an idea to add a second set of ears behind the first set. And this is mainly just because I thought it would look cool, but I imagine it also probably helps pinpoint prey in such an echoey environment. I'm kind of favoring rule of cool over actual usefulness here. Alright, I'm going to move on to my line work now. I got quite a bit of detail in the sketch phase, but this is really when I get into the nitty-gritty of detail. This step is probably a third of the time spent on the whole drawing, with color being the longest. But you can see here I'm adding more detail past my sketch as I go through with the line work, adding wrinkles into the skin, and extra little spikes here and there. It's around here that I started to try and figure out why this thing has hair and scales at the same time, and I decided that I'm going to make the scales more like teeth or horns, since hair and horns are both made out of keratin. That's really a big part of how I create my monsters, drawing and continuing to add random details, trying to make sense of them as I go. Sometimes I do my research and decisions ahead of time before I start drawing, but probably about half the time it's more of a discovery process. That might not work for you, but I encourage you to try it. It's always fun. Growing up, me and my brother used to make a game out of it. We would pass a paper back and forth and take turns adding random details to the drawing until we eventually came up with something that looked cool or completely hilarious and started over. And honestly, that's still kind of how we tell stories and world build today. Passing ideas back and forth randomly until something makes sense or sounds cool. That's probably why I enjoy doing these kind of drawing videos so much. Alright, now I'm going to move down into the hands or feet, whichever, and start adding in the claws and armor plates. Even though by this point I've decided it's not a dragon, I still went pretty dragon with the claws. With the lion-like appearance and beard-like mane, I'm probably going to have this be some variation of a Manticore. I do a lot of monster building for my D&D campaigns. I probably won't end up using this in a campaign, but when I make monsters, I always kind of think of it in that light. And here I'm giving his skin a thick, wrinkly look, kind of like elephant or rhino skin. So whatever he hunts is probably really big and has tusks or claws, which would explain his armor plates and leathery hide. So he could be hunting small dragons or really big bears. Whichever it is, you just know he's the king of the mountain. I'm having a lot of fun with this one. There's a lot of little intricate detail to mess around with. The line work step is probably my favorite step, just because the majority of my experience doing art is with black and white line work. I used to work almost exclusively with pen and paper. Some of my favorite pieces that I've done are just black and white line work drawings. I still do work with paper and pen. I just find digital a lot more versatile. So for all of my professional stuff that I do, I work almost exclusively digital now, which makes doing drawing videos like these a lot easier because I don't have to worry about setting up a camera. I just screen grab while I draw. And Procreate's great for that too, because it automatically records your artwork as you go. I mainly use that feature for making TikToks, because when you try to slow it down to get a longer video out of it, it kind of loses a lot of the detail. But when you do it in a high speed, the videos come out great. And most of the videos that I put on TikTok are 15 seconds or less. But now I'm trying to branch out into more long form content, which I'm enjoying so far. It's nice being able to show more of the process with a longer video. I think it's privated now, but I tried to put out a drawing tutorial on TikTok a couple years ago, and it didn't turn out great. But hey, we all got to start somewhere. Alright, now I'm moving into the tail, giving him some real chunky armor plates. And since I decided on Manticore, I'm going to have the plates thin out and turn into a cluster of spines at the end of the tail. And now that I've finished my line work, I'm going to go in and block off the rocks in green. Again, I'm using green because it stands out. And that way I can see if I jump past the line. It makes corrections easy. And then once I get that done, I'm going to drop the saturation down so it's more of a gray, and do the same for the monster itself using orange. I kind of take it for granted now, but the color fill tool is a massive time saver when I'm doing my color step. It's really important to use a bright color when you're doing this, especially in a drawing that has so much hair with like the little tiny crevices between, so you can catch if you go outside of the lines at all. And now I'm going to go in and add the bone color for all the spikes and armor plates. Initially, I was going to have a different color for the plates, spikes, and claws, but I like the look of having them all the same color. Usually I would suggest to vary your color though. Once I get the color done for all of the armor plates and spikes, I'm going to go in and block out the area for the hair, which I'm doing in purple initially, but afterwards I'll drop the saturation and bring it down to a gray. And now I'm going through with a spray paint brush and fading the bone color into the skin. I'm doing this mainly as an aesthetic choice, but also because I imagine the skin surrounding the spikes and plates would be hardened as well. It's important to find that balance between aesthetics and functionality when doing monster creation. And now I'm going through and adding a darker coloration to the feet and face, and a light purple for the insides of the ears. And now I'm just tweaking the saturation on the skin layer and the armor plate layer. I'm using this tan brown to shade the plates, adding some additional grooves as I go. The light source is going to be behind and above him on the right side of the canvas, way off in the distance. I think I'm going to have it be a sunset. I really like the way the shading looks on these bone plates. I definitely had a lot of fun with it. I'm kind of basing my shading pattern on teeth and keeping like Skyrim bone armor in my mind while I'm doing it. Sometimes when I shade, I do it in a straight black and then drop the opacity down, but with the bone layer I want it to have a higher saturation on the shadows, so it's more brown than the lighter parts. And now I'm using black to shade the hair, which like I just said, I'm going to drop the opacity down so it's not too dark, and it'll end up as more of a gray. And once I'm done with the hair, I'm going to go into the skin layer and do the same, keeping in mind the direction of the light. Just like with the bone plates, I'm using the shading to add more detail, accentuating the wrinkles and the folds in the skin. It's not always best to do your shading this way. Sometimes you want less detail in the shadows to really accentuate the shadows. It really just depends on what type of style you're going for though. I find going in and adding all this intricate detail really fun, so I usually do this style of shading. And now I'm going to go down and do the shading on the rock. And I have to keep in mind that the left side of the rock is in shadow, but the monster is also casting a shadow over the right side of the rock as well. And now I'm going to start on my background. I'm going to do some mountains in orange and purple, throw some fog in front of them, and then go into the background and do an orange and purple sky. And after that, I'm going to move into highlights, which I'm doing in a light orange using the Procreate light brush. And he's backlit, so I'm just doing thin lines right on the edges on the side that the light's on. And then I'm going to toss some orange clouds up in the sky behind him. And then drop the saturation on that sky and darken it a little bit and add some fog in front of him. Now I'm going to throw a black layer over the entire monster, drop the opacity down, and erase out with an airbrush all of the lit parts, which will really make him look more sinister and will make the drawing look more three-dimensional. This isn't going to work with every drawing, but it's one of my favorite shading techniques and I feel like it fits the composition. And finally, I'm just going to add some shading to the closest two mountains because I feel like that purple is just a little bit too light. And now it's done. And that's all. Thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you liked this video, and maybe even hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more drawing videos in the future. If you have a suggestion for a drawing tutorial or something else you'd like to see, go ahead and leave me a comment below and I'll try to get to it. Thanks again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Jesus wept.